Hi, everyone. Welcome to Acting Sessions. I am Marco DiGeorge. I am the co-founder and instructor at Truthful Acting Studios. We are an acting conservatory located in Orlando, Florida. And we get together from time to time and have these sessions and just talk about acting. And so the way we normally do this is as I go through the different topics of the day, we have a chat feature. And so if you're signed on with us live, you can go ahead into the chat feature and you can talk with us, ask questions, and I'll try to get to and respond to as many as I can during. Also, Samantha DiGeorge, who's our administrator, she's also on there and she'll be chatting back and forth with you as well. So we love it to be interactive. Please, by all means, feel free to comment and chat as we go through today. So today's session is on safety in acting. And with all of the news in the industry of accidents occurring on set and things happening in the industry that are really breaking the safety for the actor, I felt it was important that we just instead of talking about tools and talking about a process of acting, to kind of take a step back and really answer any questions and discuss, well, how do we keep ourselves safe as an actor through the process? And this can be whether we're on stage or whether we're on set, either film or television. But there's certain safety protocols that we want to make sure that are in place. Now, some of these we are going to make sure that we are doing to keep ourselves safe, and other things are things that I want you to be looking out for when you're, for example, on set. Things that the production should be taking care of, because there's warning signs if things are unsafe, and I never want an actor. Safety in acting is my number one concern. So when I'm training actors, safety is my number one concern. When I'm directing actors, safety is my number one concern, because really at the end of the day, we are collaborating on an art project. That's what we're doing in acting. We're part of the collaboration on something artistic. And we want this artistic thing to be done in a joyful way and in a safe way. Those are two things that are very important. We have to have fun doing it. We have to enjoy the process. And I say we have to. I would really like it if we all enjoyed the process, because if we take it too seriously, it actually pulls away from it. And the second thing is we need to do it and get through the other side of it, looking back, having a positive experience, hopefully that will end up with not only a good project, but in growth for the artists that are involved, whether it's a director, producers, anyone on crew, and also the actors as well. So, but to do that, we have to make sure that everyone involved is safe. And there's some different aspects of safety we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about physical safety. We're going to talk about emotional safety, and one that is uh, has definitely come into focus over the past decade, which is intimate safety, which is something that is also very important for us to discuss. So the first piece is physicality. So physical safety in acting. And by physicality, I mean just that. Anything that we are doing or being asked to do that is physical on a set or on a stage. Now, this could be a fight sequence. This could be a stunt that we are being asked to do. And and of course, with a lot of these superhero movies that are out, there are several stunts, and some of them are very simple. They're wire work, meaning we're attached to the wire and we're being brought up into the air and things such as that. But it's still important that we look at how to do that safely. So let's take a look at those first. Those two. Uh, the piece of physicality. So stunts and fights, which are really to me in the same realm. So for both of these things, they must be choreographed. And what I mean by choreographed, if you think of a dance and you think of somebody coming in and teaching two people the steps to a dance, and it's very specific, we need to move this way and move that way, all in a certain time. Well, stunts and fighting are the exact same thing. We need to make sure that the entire sequence is designed out just like a dance. And the way we do that is on sets or even on stage, we bring in fight choreographers, stunt choreographers, and they teach actors how to do these things. Now, there's a certain threshold that if you're not comfortable doing something on your own, that's why there are stunt actors. Stunt actors are those actors that get paid to do the stunts for the actors. They are the ones that step in, and now they are the ones that might do a fall, for example, a high fall, or a roll forward, or certain fight sequences. They're the ones that do that because that's what they're trained to do, and they are so valuable in the industry. Actors sometimes want to push themselves, through things. I don't. It might be ego. It might just be excitement. We want to do some of the things that really the stunt actors should be doing. My recommendation is allow the stunt actors to do what they do. But for simple things and for things that we might be able to do ourselves, we must rehearse it. So rehearsal is a big deal in this. Make sure that whatever set you're on, whatever stage you're on, that you have adequate time to rehearse. These are things that you can discuss with your director, with your producer, but you must have adequate time to rehearse, meaning to come in and practice these stunts. Now, excuse me, in large productions, productions with a lot of money, they tend to have all of that built in. They tend to have adequate rehearsal time to go through this. My main concern is in lower budgeted films, independent films, films that may, or even stage plays that may not fully understand the need to rehearse these things. This is where, as an actor, we need to step up and say, "Hey, I need time to go over this. I need to work with somebody that's going to walk me through how to do this physicality." And we learn how to stage fight. We learn because the thing is, physical. We see a great fight sequence in a movie. It's those aren't real. I mean, we're not really throwing punches. Now, stunt actors make it look incredibly real, but the truth is, we always must keep ourselves safe. Now, just a quick basic tip for any sort of physicality, meaning violence or fight choreography. The rule of thumb, if you're an actor doing anything on stage or on set, the person being attacked is the one that is always in control. So we never allow, so if, let's say, for example, I'm one person over here and I have to grab this other person here, right? And I'm going to grab their wrists. Well, we always have to make it look like it's a struggle. But the person that's doing the grabbing actually is not the one that needs to be in the control. The person being grabbed is the one that's in control. So what we do is the person that's doing the grabbing, we just place our hand very lightly, very lightly. So I don't know if you can see, but it's like it's not it's loose, right? It's very lightly around this. And the person that is being grabbed, right? They're the ones that then cause the struggle. So even without it, I can cause a struggle with this. I can make it look like I'm struggling. And then when you put this around, it looks like there's a struggle. And that's what we do for choke sequences. We take our hand, we just put it lightly around the person's neck, and they're the ones that make it look like that. Any sort of grabs, anything like that. So you can go to some training for this. Fight choreography training or basic stunt training for actors, and you learn that all sorts of grabs, all sorts of pushes, all sorts of anything else that is light physical that you may do as an actor, the person that is being attacked, the one that is receiving whatever the physicality is, that is the person that is always in control. So that way, with that rule in place across the board with all sorts of different physicality, with that rule in place, it makes sure that we don't get hurt in doing this, and it keeps us safe physically. So we must train though. meaning we must practice these things and we must work with a fight or stunt choreographer. And the third thing, don't do any stunts that you're not 100% comfortable with. Allow a stunt actor to do it in their place. Okay, so that's part of physicality. Now, the next piece of physicality is going to be interaction with any sort of weapons, use of weapons, or use of any sort of prop. This is also under the realm of physical safety, and this is what we've recently seen. There was a prop weapon that discharged on a set and killed somebody. There are safety protocols in place, and there are certain people on a crew that their job is to go through these safety protocols. But as an actor, I always assume that maybe something slipped through. I always make that assumption. And as an actor, even though there's safety protocols of people that are involved, of the people that are in charge of weapons, for example, they're supposed to test the weapons and make sure they're clean, make sure the guns are empty before they're handed. I, as an actor, always go through that safety protocol again myself. And the way this happens, so let's just take guns. Guns are the big one that are in focus right now. So the way this happens with a gun check, so when the armorer or the person in charge of the weapon comes over to you and they're handing you the gun and saying this gun is clear, then you can just say, can we go through a safety check? And then you and the armorer together, you look in the gun, which basically you take out, if it's an automatic, you take out the clip, you make sure the clip is empty. If it's an automatic, you cock the cylinder, the slide, make sure there's nothing in it. And then once you think it's empty, you dry fire it into the ground or into something safe. And then the armorer would do the same thing. So you would two people double checking the weapon, and then you go. And then once you hold on to this weapon, you never set it down, not even for a second. Not even just to set it down and adjust something and pick it back up. We never set down this weapon. And that's part of the safety of knowing that it's never out of your control. Nothing could have ever happened to it in that time. So we have to always maintain that. If we ever do have to set it down, if we have to go to the restroom or anything else, then we hand it back in and we turn it back into the armor. And then when we come back, let's say we go to the restroom, we come back, we safety check it again. We must safety check our weapons all the time. All the time. Sometimes it's going to feel like overkill. It's like, I just safety checked it 5 minutes ago. Yeah, but it was out of your control for those 5 minutes. Do it again. Take that time. And that will stop some of these things from happening. The next thing is you always treat every weapon on a film set or on a stage as if it's real. And many times we're not using, I mean, when I say they're not real, they're plastic or they're obviously props. But it's important as an actor to get into the habit of treating every single weapon as if it's real and as if it's ready to cause harm. And we don't play around with them. So for example, guns, again, we will never just play around with a firearm. We'll never be pointing it around. We'll never be joking with it. We must take it extremely seriously as if it's a loaded weapon that is ready to fire. The next thing is we never point it in the direction of other human beings. Now, sometimes there will be a shot. They'll say they'll have the camera and they'll want you to point the gun up, but typically you're never pulling the trigger or firing that weapon as it's being pointed in the direction of anyone else. That would be a separate shot. So we need to make careful. One, we don't want to point it in the direction of anyone else. I mean, unless they're specifically asking you for a shot, we have to be extremely careful with that. We do not point it in the direction of somebody else. And we do not pull the trigger at all. We have to be very careful of that as it's pointing, really, unless it is specified for us to do. So to me, there is a tremendous amount of responsibility that actors must take. We must not just assume that everyone else is doing their job. I hope they are, But sometimes, as we've seen, things get through. And as an actor, if we do our part, we can make sure these things don't happen. So there are weapons. There are what's called blank firing weapons. A blank firing weapon is it's a type of firearm that still uses it's not a bullet, but it's a shell of a bullet that still has gunpowder in it and causes the sound of an explosion. It still causes the explosion that a bullet would have. It just is not pushing out the bullet through the gun. And those blanks are being put into the gun, and those are used for certain sequences where they want to see the gun being fired and they want the spark to go out and they want to see the release of pressure and smoke coming out of the barrel. And so they'll get those different shots of actually firing the gun, but there's no projectile coming out. Now, because there's no bullet actually being projected out, some people will get comfortable and think, oh, these are safe. And once again, blank firing guns are not safe. They are lethal within about a foot or so. I used to say, depending on the gun and the blank, it could be up to 2 feet. They're lethal, meaning the amount of pressure coming out of that barrel can still penetrate skin, can still go through you. So we got to be super careful about that. And then also, if anything gets inside the barrel of the gun, anything. So let's say you set it down and it on a table and a little piece of rock or a little piece of metal or something goes inside the barrel, just slips in, you're still firing it. That pressure is going to push that out. And that is going to be a projectile that could still harm somebody. So these are things we always have to keep in mind. It's incredibly important that if we just take it seriously and we have a couple rules that we adhere to, never point it in the direction of somebody, never pull the trigger, never, once you safety check it, never allow it to be out of your possession. Those type of things can really help and allow you to feel comfortable on set, allow everyone else to feel comfortable on set. That's important. Also, we get into other things like knives, and typically they're rubber type of knives that you can actually, so that you can show like a stabbing, or they're retractable. There's actually like a knife where you can hold it and the blade itself will retract back into the handle, so you can looks like you're stabbing with it. Even those things, we need to safety check them, make sure they're working properly, and then we don't play around with them. We do the scene exactly as it was choreographed, and that's all. The other biggest thing of any sort of physicality, we must never, 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 never improvise physicality. We must never improvise a fight sequence. We must never improvise a struggle, improvise weapon play. Everything must be down to every little move, to the meticulous level, everything must be choreographed. Everyone involved must know exactly what is happening at every moment. And if we do that, you can keep yourself safe. And you can keep everyone around you safe. So this is what is the big thing that's been on everyone's mind lately is the physical safety on set. So I definitely wanted to address that first. One other realm of physicality that falls under props is use of drugs on set. And what I mean by that are stage drugs. So characters take drugs, they drink alcohol, they do those type of things. It's critical that we make sure we know what because it's fake, right? There's a stage drug, so it's not an actual drug. It's a replica, but we need to know still what it's made of and if we're okay ingesting it. So stage cocaine, for example, might be some sort of powder, but we need to make sure. And you just check. You could talk to your producer, talk to your director, find out what it's made of. There's a type of stage cocaine that is a lactose powder, but if you're lactose intolerant, this could be an issue. So these are type of things that you need to just check, and again, just safety check it all the way through and make sure that you're okay with that. And we must never, ever, ever, ever take actual drugs or alcohol while we are in performance. in a rehearsal, on set, on stage, we don't ever act under the influence. That's critical. That's critical. We must be of sound mind, sound body. We must be in control of everything we're doing. And so, if we take anything that alters our control or perception, we can be putting people in danger. So, all of the alcohol, because I've seen it on independent films before, they're like, "Oh, well, we'll drink real beer because, uh, it's a couple shots and and that's all we'll do, or we'll have real wine at the table." It's like, no, 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 no. It's all stage alcohol. It's non-alcoholic what we're drinking. It can look like beer, it can look like wine, but it's not actually beer and wine. So be true to that. Even if a director says, "Oh, it's okay, you can have a beer while doing this shot," say no, no, and stay true to only drinking what you're supposed to keep yourself safe and everyone else safe. All right, so the next realm I want to talk about is emotions, and I have another session that goes into this in depth, and it's emotions in acting, and you can actually watch that entire session where I go into this in depth. But really, what I want to say about emotional safety is that uh, our emotional being, the ability to be vulnerable in a scene, is something that is critical for an actor to do. This is one of the things that we bring to the table, is our ability to show our vulnerability. So, but it's important we learn how to do this in a safe way. And by safety in here, what I really mean is, and again, I have a whole other session, so I'm going to go over this quickly today. But we learn how to use our imagination to be able to step into these wonderful emotional arenas. We use imagination instead of using anything real in our lives. So, to keep ourselves safe, we need to stay away from real events or real, what we would call triggers in our own life. For example, if we had some sort of trauma earlier in our lives, we lose a loved one or something bad happens to us, we don't want to think about those things to then bring that to use that emotion. That is an unsafe way of working, and it can cause you harm and it can cause those around you harm, simply because it will allow you to slip out of control while you are uh, while you're acting. So we learn through processes. You learn an acting process, and many of the processes, organic processes, like the Meisner approach, which is what I teach. You learn how to use your imagination, how to step in. It's what Stanislavski, going back 100 years, used to call the magical as if. So when we're working on a scene, we need to be able to relate to it, but we relate it back kind of to our own life right now by using our imagination. Oh, well, this scene is as if this were happening in my own life. And by coming up with something imaginary, but based in something that would affect us if it happened, it gives us the ability to connect in. Now, as an actor, it's critical to be able to not only step into the life, but we must be able to step out of the life. That's where our safety lies. So we need to be able to step in. It's like walking through a force field, right? We step right into the life, and then when we're done, we step out of that force field. And it allows us a safety because there's a separation between us, who we are as the actor, and this thing called character, this life that we are in and portraying. So this comes with training. So you find a process that allows you to not only step into the life, but then whenever you need to step out. So in the process we teach how to step in, and then we learn something called a trigger out, which means almost in an instant, the actors learn how to do something that snaps them back. It like pulls them right back to who they are and out of any imaginary world that they stepped into. And that way they have full control. The actors have full control at all times to go anywhere they need to emotionally, but then they have the control to, at a moment, to snap back. and that's critical in emotional acting. The other thing is as an actor, I believe it's important to keep your process private. To not really talk about how you get to where you are as an actor. And I mean, a lot of people want to know that. Let's say you're doing a stage play and there's a talk back afterwards, and people are going to ask, well, how do you step into this role? How do you step into that emotional state? And we need to learn how to answer these questions without actually answering them, because we don't want to give away our process. It actually can create the process itself to be unsafe if we don't know how to talk about it. And also it could cause other people to judge what you're actually doing or how you're doing it. So it's better to keep it private. And there's also a power in the privacy, because when we use imaginary circumstances and things that are personal to us, even though they're imaginary, they're still personal, and there's a power in keeping it private. And what I mean by private, as an actor, you really don't need to talk about your process with anyone, not other actors, not the director. The director does not need to know what process you're working under. You just need to be able to collaborate. You need to be able to take their direction and then do your own thing with it. But you don't, if a director ever asks, well, how do you get there? You don't need to explain it. You just say, well, I have a process. And that will help keep that safe as well. Because one of the things that I see break safety with actors are directors that are trying to intervene too much. When a director steps in and says, "Oh, this is what I need you to do in order to get emotional," and they give you something that is unsafe. Because they'll say, "Oh, have you ever lost somebody before?" And it's like, "Yes, I lost my father." It's like, "Okay, well, go and think about that and think about what it was like." And then, and they're the director's trying to guide you to something that could be personally triggering, and very unsafe for me. And so typically when I'm working with directors that are more technically based like that, what I'll do is I'll just tell them, "Okay, well, what are you looking for? Let me know what your vision is. And then give me a few moments and let me see if I can do this for you." And then I'll do my own process and see if they like it or how they want to adjust it. But I don't ever let a director change my process or adjust my process. I collaborate with them, but your process is personal to you. Uh, and then the last thing about emotional safety is learning how to have a greater balance in your life. And because we step into very trying roles sometimes, and it is very emotional, and it is very personal, and it's a lot of work and a lot of time we put into it as well. So we're also very very tired and fatigued, and there's just a lot we put into it. So it's important that we learn also how to balance out our life outside of acting, so we're not stepping out of this very exhausting day and then also having a lot of drama and a lot of conflict in our personal life. So learning how to keep yourself balanced, meaning having time to recover. Recovery time is very important. The time to work is very important, and then there's time to step away from the work is also important. So those two things, learning how to do that can also help keep you grounded. So whatever you need to do, if you need to exercise, make sure you're eating well, meditate, journal. I mean, whatever you can do personally, whatever works for you, but keep your life balanced. Spend time with family, spend time with friends. Um, Make sure the only thing you don't be the only thing you're doing is working, working, working. It will burn you out. And then all of a sudden, when then you step into some of these deeper emotional scenes, it can charge other things that are already inside of you that are out of balance. The more imbalanced you are, the more safe you will be overall. Okay, and as I said, if you have any other questions on the emotions, please look at some of the other sessions. I go into some of this stuff more deeply. I have one on emotions in acting, and I have one called The Duality of the Human Psyche that talks about what we need to do to try to keep ourselves in balance. So the last area I want to discuss, and then I'll get into some questions that have been submitted, is this area called intimacy. And this is one that has come into focus much more over the last few years. And because for many years, especially in film, For many years, intimacy was something that we didn't know how to deal with. I say we, is it the industry? I'm talking about the industry, had difficulty dealing with, and it's kind of an uncomfortable topic. If you have any sort of intimacy between characters or any sort of nudity in a scene, it's uncomfortable to talk about. So it was avoided, for a large part. And then it was also improved in two things that we must not do. Now, intimacy, I'm talking about any level of nudity. I'm talking about any physical contact, two people that are having physical contact in an intimate way. If it's just a simple kiss, that's intimacy, and we need to deal with it in a very specific way. Um, of course, and then when we get into like simulated sex or anything like that, that again, that's also levels of intimacy. So this is something that is very, very important in how we deal with. Now, this must be dealt with in rehearsal, on film, on stage, doesn't matter. We must have time before we are in front of the camera to work through some of these moments. And the way we do this now with intimacy is there's something called an intimacy choreographer. Now, whether you're able to get, if you're a director and you're able to get an outside intimacy choreographer, sometimes independent films or, lower level films don't have the ability to do that, or community theater doesn't have the ability to do that. It's like, okay, well, then the directors and the producers need to learn the basics of, choreographing intimacy. And really, it's that, first of all, just number one rule, all intimacy must be choreographed. All. And the second is it must be rehearsed, not choreographed on set. We must do this in rehearsal and have the time to fully understand what's going on. And really, what this means is we're going to now treat intimacy the same way we do stunts and fights. We're going to do walkthroughs. We're going to break it down to the mechanical level. And we're going to almost make it a step-by-step logical process versus something that we would just do. Because when you would have two actors that kissed back in the day, you could say, okay, oh, well, these two actors are going to kiss, so go ahead and just, kiss each other. And it would be like improv, like that. And the problem is it's vulnerable. And there could be hard feelings and there could be a lot of anxiety going on. But actors, as actors have done for years and years and years, just try to push through it. We try to fight through any sort of anxiety that we feel. But the truth is, we don't need to be feeling that level of anxiety, not any sort of fearful anxiety. We're always anxious acting. I mean, it's difficult. The spotlight's on us, the cameras are on us. But what I'm talking about is feeling uncomfortable. Like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And then you improv a kiss, and someone might be more forceful than they need to, or they might put their hand somewhere where you don't want them to put their hand. I mean, it's an ugly, ugly situation. And this was going on for years. So now, as long as we treat it the same way we would a fight sequence, where we break it down component by component. So if I'm directing and I'm saying, okay, we're going to do a kiss sequence, I'm going to walk the actors through it. I'm going to be very direct about it. Right? There's nothing funny about it. There's nothing, weird about it. It's just I'm going to walk through. I'm going to say, okay, person number one, you're going to take your hand, you're going to put it right here, right? That's where your hand is going to go. The person number two, you're going to lean in. Person one, you're going to tilt your head to this side. And I kind of walk it through. I typically don't have any actual physical contact. I definitely don't rehearse the kiss until the end, until I get all the physicality leading up to it exactly how I want to see it on the screen. So, and I'll just go over that and I'll make sure the actors know exactly what is going to happen when it's going to happen. So they feel comfortable. They're not going to be surprised by anything. Nothing's going to all of a sudden, this person is not going to grab something else or put their hand no, nothing. Nothing is improv. And so we break it down to the most technical levels and we rehearse it at like a pretty much quarter speed, right? We move very slowly as we rehearse the movements, and then we go through it. This is for basically anything that's intimate. Even if I'm just having like a hand-holding scene, I'm going to talk through it with the actors first. I'm say, okay, this actor is going to grab your hand. He's going to go like this and grab your hand like this, and they're going to hold it and just walk through. Are we both okay with this? And so when we start talking about it and just getting this out in the open, it becomes less uncomfortable to talk about, and it becomes more matter of fact and something direct. And now it's the same thing as choreographing a stunt. We're choreographing intimacy. Both actors know exactly what they're going to do, and that's exactly what they do. Nothing more. Nothing more. If I want something more, I need to re-choreograph it. I need to walk it through with both actors first, make sure they're both comfortable, make sure they both understand, and then we proceed. Now, a couple of other things that you have to do for intimacy is we need to make sure we set the tone in a rehearsal, on a set, on a stage. We need to set the tone that intimacy is nothing that we joke about. Now, this is something that goes on and has been going on for as long as I can remember. Is you have a kiss scene, and then another cast member or a crew member jokes about it. Oh, wow, that was a really good kiss. And it's like, my God, one, that's creepy, right? Don't do that. And two, it's awkward. And now you're making us feel uncomfortable. You're making and so what happens is we as human beings tend to break tension with a joke. We will make a joke to break the tension. That's just kind of how we're wired. But the problem with it is when we're making comments about something that has happened in an intimate way, whether we're making an inappropriate comment or someone else is around us, it immediately breaks the safety. It makes the people involved feel extremely uncomfortable with what's happening. So, as a director, and when I teach directing, I tell my directors, you set the tone of this. You must not allow anybody on set to make even the slightest comment. Right, the director is the only one that should be working with this scene. Nobody else should be commenting. There should be no snickering. There should be no joking. Nothing. Nothing. And that will add to then the safety. We feel comfortable doing it because we don't feel like people are criticizing or judging or putting any sort of pressure on us. So that's incredibly important. The other thing is, as the actors involved with it, we must not make it real. Now, by making it real, anything that we do in acting, there's a rule I have, and the rule is whatever happens on stage stays on stage. And this could be for a fight sequence, this could be for an argument scene, this could be for anything. Whatever we do on stage, we are giving each other permission to step on stage. And I say on stage, I mean the rehearsal stage, on set, or on an actual theater stage. But whenever we go up into that realm of our acting, we're giving each other permission to go where we need to go, meaning emotionally or whatever it is, with what we're doing in the scene. But we're allowed to go there. We're allowed to fight as hard as we can within the scene. And but then when it's done, as I said earlier, we step out of that life. And my rule that I have is once you step out of it, you do not talk about it. You don't talk about anything that has happened. Now, yes, you can talk with the director about acting. You can talk actor to actor about things that are acting related only, but we do not talk about the emotion. We do not talk about anything that is intimate. We do not talk about it. Because when we talk about it, that makes it real. That immediately makes it real. And we must have a separation. We must be able to step on stage and do whatever we need to do. And if you're doing, let's say you're doing a scene for a film, right? And now, it's a kissing sequence for a film, and you're doing a shot for it. But they're going to do take after take after take. We have to do 4 or 6 takes, and then we're covering it from different angles. So you might have to do this same kiss, you know, eh, 18, 20 times to cover it around, in the different shots. So all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we need to be able to step in, do what we need to do, step out, and then release from it. We don't talk about it. We just let it go. It's another stunt, and that's it. That's all it is. And that keeps it safe. Not address because the moment we talk about it outside, as human beings, we talk about it, and even like, oh, I really like that, whatever it is, right? It's like it's weird. It's weird to even say. It makes it real, and we don't want to bring the emotions of a scene, the feelings that we're having in a scene. We don't want to bring them and make those real between the actors. We must not. That's how we stay safe. We we must keep the separation between our lives in that, in our acting, and then our actual lives out in the real world. So I have to remind actors through the process over and over, don't make it real. Don't make it real, and don't talk about it outside. And I remind my directors that I teach as well the same thing. Don't make it real. You don't make it real with your actors, and don't allow anyone else to make it real. They must not do that. It's actually a very simple rule, and if you stay true to it, you'll find that it makes all these intimate type of things uh, much easier to do, because it distills it down to technique, to something actually very technical, um, which is not as vulnerable to do. Okay, so uh, there are some other questions that were submitted, and this is a topic that I can I can talk quite a bit about. So I want to go ahead and get into some of these other questions, just to make sure I have time to do that. And the first one, is it possible for an actor to have trauma from a certain role? Well, the short answer is yes, it is possible for that to happen, but not typically for the reasons you would think. Meaning, it's I'm not going to take a role of an antagonist, of a a villain, and because I'm playing a villain, it's not going to seep into my life, and I'm not going to have trauma from the actual character. That's a misconception of acting. But you could create trauma if you're not working safely. If I'm stepping into a villain where I have to be murderous or I have to do very harsh things, if I'm not applying emotional safety, yes, I could create trauma for myself in the emotions of that role. I need to have the ability emotionally to step in and step out. I need to you work from my imagination. If I'm doing that, it can be a lot of fun playing an antagonist. But if I'm not working safely, yes, I can create trauma. Also, fight choreography, uh, intimacy, as I said, emotions, all of the realms, depending on what the role is. If it's not being done by the production in a safe way, or I don't feel that I'm safe, but I still push through in the role, that could also create a post-traumatic stress as well, or a trauma. But it's typically from the safety. It's how I'm working as an actor, it's how the production around me is working. Those things could create trauma or could create a post stress, but not the role itself. Because as an actor, we learn very safe and fun ways to step into characters, and we learn that there's a separation, so I can step into the life of any character, absolutely any character, and I can feel very real things, but then I can step out. And so that's really the short answer. Um, but yeah, if we don't work safely, yes, a role or just your acting process could cause you trauma. So we need to be careful about that. So the next thing is what if I'm not comfortable with something the director is asking me to do? Very good question. Because after everything I'm saying and working safely and everything else, but now you're hired on an independent film, and the director is saying, okay, we're just go ahead and like improv a fight scene. And you're like, well, I'm not comfortable doing that. It's like, well, it's okay. We're just gonna get some general coverage, just like throw some punches, and it's like, no. So it's okay to say no. If you're not comfortable with something the director is asking you to do in any of these three realms, then talk to the director about it. I mean, just don't flat out say no, but talk to the director and say, I'm really not comfortable doing this. If it's a physical stunt, then you say, can we please choreograph it? Can we spend some time practicing it and going through until I gain comfort? If it's intimacy, the same thing. It's like, okay, can we please break it down and walk it through? I don't feel comfortable. This feels like we're improving it. Can we please not do that? Now, emotional, there's very few things that you should feel uncomfortable going to when it comes to emotions. As actors, that's what we train to do. But if you are feeling something, if something is not feeling safe for you, then you talk to the director and say, listen, this isn't feeling safe right now. Can I please talk about it? Can we discuss it and see if we can find a safe way into it? Your safety is important. And if there's any sort of red flag going up, then take it seriously and address it. And usually talking through it and discussing it will really help in overcoming whatever anxiety you're having. But it's definitely important to do that. So sometimes also a director may ask you to do a stunt because they don't think it's a big deal. It's like, oh, I just need you're just going to do a shoulder roll, which is kind of like a front roll dive. You're going to do a shoulder roll. And it's like, I don't know how to do a shoulder roll. And they might even know how to do it. And they're like, oh, it's pretty easy. You just go like this and you kind of bend forward and you put your shoulder down and you kind of roll through it. And you might think, okay, well, that's not a big deal. But if you're not comfortable, if you don't know how to do it, do not do it. Say, no, I'd rather have the stunt actor do it. Or I'd rather let's spend some time and train me how to do this. I don't just want to jump in and do a roll or a flip or a fall or anything else. I would like to have time to do it safely and properly. And that's okay to say. Now, many of these things should be discussed ahead of time. This is for that rare occasion where you're surprised by something on set. Hopefully, this has been discussed all the way from the casting process all the way through rehearsal. You're going to know what to expect and what is going to be expected of you. But there is that rare occasion you get on set and they're like, "Oh, here's what I'm going to have you do," and you're like, and you can say no. You can say no. I don't feel comfortable with that until we rehearse it, or I don't feel comfortable with that at all. If you feel that you're personally at danger, anytime you feel you're at risk, say something about it. Okay, so what's my best advice to handle intimacy in scenes? So I talked a lot about intimacy, and my best advice is rehearse it. Rehearse it, rehearse it, rehearse it. You don't rehearse the actual intimacy, you rehearse all of the technical movements leading up to it. Anything that it is leading up to it. Even nudity, you don't rehearse the nudity necessarily, but you rehearse the movements of if you have to take off something or do something. You kind of rehearse the movements, all of that. So none of it is improv. The other thing for intimacy, what I typically would ask for on in a rehearsal or on a set is I would ask for it to be shot on what's called a closed set. A closed set means it's a controlled environment with only essential personnel there watching. So only the people that need to be there, the camera operator, a camera assistant, possibly audio, only people that need to be on set are on set, and only the people that are instrumental that need to be the creative team is watching camera. Usually a director and maybe the director of photography is watching camera, and that's it. No, anyone else that is non-essential clears set, and they're not there for those scenes. And that has a reduced number of people involved. It can really help make you feel comfortable doing those intimate scenes, and you can absolutely ask for that as an actor. Even in a stage rehearsal, if you're rehearsing something intimate, as a director on stage, I want to direct my intimate moments on their own, meaning with no other actors there, only the actors that are involved in the intimacy and me, and that's it. And we kind of work through it so they feel comfortable before it's being presented to other actors or other crew. So that's okay to ask for. If I feel unsafe on a production, what should I do? So, as I said before, talk to your director If you're not getting anywhere with the director, talk to a producer. Talk to the chain of command that is on set. If it's in stage, you talk to your director who's directing you on stage. Uh, if you're really still feeling unsafe and that the director is not hearing you, you go to the artistic director of the theater. So there's kind of a chain of command that we can go to. As actors, we can also contact, for film, we can contact the Screen Actors Guild, the union. And even if you're not a member of the union, if you're feeling unsafe, you can still call them for advice and for help and to say, hey, I don't feel unsafe. What should I do? For stage, it's called Actors Equity. That's the union for there, but you call your union. If you're a part of the crew, you call your union. Even if you're not part of the union, even if you're non-union, it's okay. You can still call the union responsible for safety and you can ask, hey, I'm feeling unsafe. What should I do about this situation? Um, those are things that you can do. But first, go through the chain of command on set. Talk to who you're supposed to. Depending on what type of set it is, it might be different, but typically it's going to be your director that you can talk to, or a producer. On stage, your director or the artistic director. And that way you can then work it out. Do it privately. Don't cause a scene in front of everyone else. Just pull the director aside and say, hey, I'm feeling unsafe about this. And then do that. If the director is the one that's making you feel unsafe, then you go to the next person up. If they're still making you feel unsafe, then you go to the union. And they will typically step in. Okay, but there are resources for you to do. If you're still at the end of everything, at the end of every production, and at the end of every resource of trying to talk to about feeling unsafe, if you still don't feel safe, you don't have to be there. As an actor, you don't have to be there. So you could say, look, if we can't resolve this, I can't be part of this production. That should be your last resort, but I would much rather, your safety is way more important than the production. And it's, because I always say, as a director, I always say, look, we give everything we have to the production. The production becomes before anything else. But that's with a caveat. That means we're all safe working on this production. And then the production comes first. We're all collaborating together in a safe way. But yeah, if there's something that is putting your emotional safety, your mental safety, your physical safety, your intimacy safety at risk, then you can take a step back. You don't have to do it. I don't care what anyone says. You don't put yourself at risk. This is good. So what about auditions? How should auditions be handled in regarding safety? So when I teach auditioning to future filmmakers, the way I teach it is that the auditioning is the same thing. That right from the first casting notice that goes out, we need to be very upfront and direct about anything that would be involved in the film. Meaning, you need to know right away if you're auditioning for a role. You need to know: is there any sort of intimacy? Is there any sort of harsh language? We run into actors that I just don't. They don't want to say certain words, and that's okay, but we need to know ahead of time. So what I tell my filmmakers is that, listen, uh, in your casting notice, just make sure they know that there is, strong language is used, and then you can discuss it in the casting. But you need to make sure that if you're like, listen, there's like 3 words out there and that's it, that I will not say no matter what, you need to make sure that that is known, and you can, ask during the casting process to either see a copy of the script or just what language is actually used. It's okay. It's okay to ask that. Physicality. We need to know up front, what physicality are we being asked to do? As an actor, I never want to be surprised with any of these things. Nudity. Nudity must be disclosed up front. This is a partial nudity role. This is a full frontal role. Whatever this is, we need to know up front what level of nudity is being asked for. Because right away, right from the casting, you can say, you know what, I don't want to audition for this because I don't feel comfortable with nudity. Okay, then that's great. We know up front. The one thing I don't like as an actor, I go to an audition and then I go through the whole process and they're like, oh, but yeah, we do have nudity in this. It's like, well, you should have told me that like 4 auditions ago, or any other concerns you have. So in castings, typically it's the same rules apply. In an audition, there should not be physicality, like actual actor to actor physicality. They shouldn't be asking you to do any sort of stunts. There should be no intimacy in an audition. Now, in a commercial audition, might you shake hands with people, or you pat someone on the shoulder, or there's things like that, or you're playing a family in this commercial, so you put your arm around somebody. Yeah, I still would ask. I say, hey, I'm going to put my arm around you. Is that okay? But those light physical things are fine. But when we get into, now we're casting for a drama, and I've seen this before where casting directors are like, okay, I'm gonna bring you together and to judge chemistry, right? I need to kind of evaluate chemistry of the actors. I'm gonna have you kiss each other, and they improv it. No, absolutely not. So that's when, even when you're at an audition, if they're asking you to do something that violates your safety, just say, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable doing that. Not without it being choreographed. You're within your right to do that. So the same rules that apply for on set, on stage, throughout the entire process, those same rules apply for auditions as well. So, and my biggest thing for any sort of physicality is that it must be planned ahead of time. We must not ever surprise our partner with physicality. Any, like, no pushes, no punches, no slaps, no kisses, no anything like that. We must not surprise our partner. Again, handshakes are fine, or high fives are fine, things like that, because it takes the other. If I put up my hand, it takes the other person to do the same thing. So, as Sam just said in the chat, consent is essential. It's everything, and so we want to make sure that both actors are consenting prior to doing anything. And our last question that we have is, with the recent events of guns on set, should I be concerned? I don't think you should be concerned. I think you should be cautious. I think it's a it's a reminder to us how essential it is to make sure that we are in charge of our own safety, because things slip through the cracks. So it's not that you should be concerned, but you should have your eyes open. You should be looking around. If there's anything that does concern you while you're on a set or on a stage, you need to say something. Don't let it slip. Anything. If you notice an actor, I've heard something before where it was one actor was telling me, yeah, I couldn't believe it. Before the show, the other actor was doing drugs or drinking, or it's like, man, you need to say something. Right? I was being told after the show had already done its run, and it was like, well, there's nothing I can do now. But during a run of a show, no actor should be under the influence. That's a breach in safety. If you notice something on set that is being done that's not safe, you need to say something. And again, you say something very respectfully, very nicely, even pull somebody aside and say, hey, this is unsafe. I think we should, it should be choreographed, or I think it should be done differently. And if they do not listen to you, then, as I said before, then the union is the next place to go. And hopefully we're going to see these things get more and more under control. So I don't think you should be concerned. I don't want I don't want you out there worried when you're on set. The majority of sets are run very well, very, very well. It just happens every now and then there's a set that's not. If you are doing your part and you're keeping your eyes open and you're speaking up when you need to, then everything's going to be okay. All right. And don't compromise. That's a big one. Don't compromise. Right. Nobody's going to blacklist you from the industry. Nobody's going to, I know there's like these terms, actors are always worried, like, oh, well, what if I don't do what they ask me to do, and then then I can't work again. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. Uh, for saying no to something or worrying about your safety is not a negative thing at all. And there are many other actors right behind you that would back you up if you spoke up for for safety on set or on stage. So feel comfortable doing that. And ultimately, we want you to enjoy your acting. We want you to have fun. And to have fun, I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel comfortable. And I want you to have the time of your life when I'm working with you as an actor. That's the goal. And so, but when you're out there, please be safe. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I mean, these hour sessions go by pretty quick, but we're always open to answering other questions. We're going to be having our next session in a few weeks, but even in the meantime, if you have any questions, you could email us right here at info@truthfulacting.com, or you could even call or text us right here. You'll get Samantha. She's the one that you reach on that. But you can send us you can give us a call. You can send us a text if you have any questions about anything that we're talking about. Follow-up questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those for you. Also, if you have any questions about our studio or what we do, what we teach, we can also answer those for you. But thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really just had a great time, and I love talking about acting with all of you. So have a great rest of your day, rest of your evening, and hope to see you all soon.